I was gonna try and make some type of cool intro, but I don't really have anything from Fallout except from this Pipboy now. So here's how you build it. Things that you need to build this. You need something to punch holes. I have a hole puncher in here. Some steel rivets, some 2-part epoxy, paint, a hammer, just basic tools, shears, foam, some toothpaste lids, a cat bottle, a magnet, a pencil. Yeah, pretty much just basic building materials. Now is the time to create your template. Well, I actually got this template online. I'll leave the link in the description. But however, it's made for making stuff or making this out of foam, not for sheet metal. So whenever you add something like that, if you listen to the directions, it's going to be really flat and not interesting. So you have to modify it yourself whenever you do that. Now, it's actually not that hard. All you have to do is add some like squares and stuff. But if you don't know how to do that, you'll probably figure out later in the video. And whenever you do this, you want to make sure it fits the phone or the iPod that you're using. And actually, don't be like, if it covers it like that, that's fine, because you can't have it cover the entire thing or have the whole screen showing, or else, I mean, that's just going to look weird because that part is not that wide. So after you make your template, get your piece, put it on here, and then mark it. Like, put it on your PVC pipe and then mark it and make a line right here. I'm leaving a little bit of material on both sides just so whenever I paint it, it'll look more official. Then what you want to do, you want to go and then you want to cut it slowly. You don't want to go too fast, or else you'll just rush it and it'll look bad. Now since I'm done doing that, I'm going to use the bench grinder to bevel the edge a little bit. And one important tip, while you do this, make sure you're wearing a mask, because you seriously don't want this PVC stuff to get on your to get in your lungs. It's time to trace out your parts on whatever material you are using. One tip that helped me a lot, I probably shouldn't even be mentioning this, but if you're using a sheet steel, you could get a magnet, then you could hold it down, then you could just go ahead and trace it, then that way you don't have to put your hand or like a finger on it, and then then like it moves around, and then the shape gets all off. Just do this, it's a lot easier. And one thing I like to do, I like to trace out my parts one at a time. I don't like to trace them out all on the steel at once, because while I'm cutting, I might have to cut into something else and I accidentally might get another piece. So just do one at a time. Just cut out your parts. For pieces like this, it's important that you punch holes or drill holes inside it so you have somewhere for the shears to go in, and you can kind of like just cut and kind of like go dot to dot, cutting it out. The grinder to shape your pieces, but remember, always wear eye protection while doing this. You do not want anything to get into your eye. It's hard to see in the video, but you see I have this piece clamped in the vise. You want to like just file it and work on it like this. You know, just try to clean up the best that you can and just try to make it look perfect. But don't spend like such a long amount of time on this, because it's still gonna look good no matter what. Now bend the 1/4 marks you made with your Sharpie. Here's the bends. Sorry I didn't get the footage of me bending it, but all you do is put it in a vise or like some tool like that, and kind of like just slowly hammer it over. That's how you get this nice bent look. And what we're going to do now, you have to cut out the 2 pieces to go in right here. It should look like a triangle, but with one rounded side. Vents in these areas, I'm just going to hammer them in with the chisel instead of cutting them, and I'm just going to see how that works. I hammered in the vents here. It actually doesn't look too bad, so I'm not going to cut into it, and I think it's actually easier than cutting to make the vents. Do any folding of these 1/4 pieces here, cut them out before you bend it. That's actually a mistake I made. Same with this piece right here. And just make the rest of your bends and just finish shaping your pieces. Then punch holes wherever your holes need to be punched. And this looks really sloppy here, but I soldered these parts on. Now is the time to solder the parts on that you want on the Pipboy. It looks really sloppy here, but I just welded the riser onto one of the front pieces. Pieces also need to be attached. Some detail work with the hammer and a small chisel to get these notches in here for the piece that we're going to connect a toothpaste cap onto. Parts and use a wire wheel or sandpaper to clean up all of the oxidation and rust on the metal, just to give it a nice brushed appearance like the one in the game. Or if you want to, you could use a higher grit sandpaper and work your way up to give it a mirror finish. That would actually look pretty cool, you know, and add some brass to it, you know, make a pimp boy. But if you want to make a pip boy, just do this, alright? Once you're done sanding your pieces, you can start some of the detail work, like the switches and knobs. What you do, you get this piece with the dowel that you chiseled into, get a large pop rivet, rivet it through, and then peen down the other side for maximum strength. Now, you totally could keep it like this and it'll be fine, but if you want to make it more game accurate, you're going to get some epoxy, or glue, doesn't really matter, but I want to use epoxy because it'll be stronger. Pretty much just glue this cap on there, just like that, and don't worry about it not matching because we're going to paint this entire thing later. It is sturdy as heck, but if you were to want to make it a functional knob, or whatever you would call it, you would get a longer pop rivet. So pretty much whenever you put the pop rivet through, you'll still have room to rivet the other side and you'll still be able to spin it. But that may get loose over time, so that's just why I chose using glue. A second detail piece, print out your pressure or dial there and cut out your clear plastic. You want to punch holes through it. You want to line it up and just punch a hole with your hole puncher or a drill or like whatever, and then line them all up. Put this thing on top of it, put it on top of your detailed piece, and then just pop it in with your rivet gun. That looks pretty good. Now cut a piece out of your craft foam, cut it to the shape of both of your detail pieces, then use epoxy to glue it on, just to make this all one piece now. Let this sit overnight before I glue this piece on, just so this doesn't move around while I'm trying to work with it. I glued on the other detail piece. It looks pretty good, pretty accurate to the pictures I was using. Now you have to cut out foam to these shapes because you obviously need something for that to sit on there. Alright, but then whenever you do this, make sure you mark it because it's just a mess if you don't mark it. And then just glue it on with epoxy. Alright. Oh yeah, and if you're going to use epoxy, I recommend Gorilla epoxy. I tried using other types. They just didn't work out too well. It was just a big mess and it was really bad. Then, while you're doing this, glue on your milk cap cap. It's kind of hard to see in the picture. Yeah, your melt cap. Don't worry about the other side. It's going to be hidden, and don't worry about the color because we're going to paint over it later. And also, there's like, just put some foam right here for two reasons. Whenever you put your Pipboy on like that, oh yeah, it's looking pretty good by the way. If you're using it as a phone or using it as a phone case, there's going to be light shining through, and then this piece of foam here would block the light. So that's pretty good. And whenever we add the hinge, it's going to make it feel more sturdy, and that's always a good thing. I've been avoiding this part, and now it's time for me to stop running from it. On this part of the Pipboy, I soldered this together and put the foam on before I added this piece here with the buttons, and you see that goes on like that. I don't want to weld the rest of this together, so I'm just going to see what I could do with epoxy and rivets. My plan is I'm going to go, I just folded the bends, that's where I'm going to bend it. I'm just going to make a simple square structure, rectangle structure. Alright, and what I'm still thinking on this part, what I should do. I think this is the best option because this thing is going to hinge up and forth, and you don't want something here. So the shape here is going to be a box like that. Alright, and then how it's going to go, it's going to fold over. There's going to be a bend there, your 3 buttons. Then one part here, see if I can fold that over. Then pretty much just the 3 sides, here, here, and here. And then this back side here, I'm going to punch holes into it, and it's pretty much going to lay back here like this. So whenever you design this, if you want to make it easier on yourself, make it so a piece of steel is going back there, then this coming up there, you know, and then that part would be complete. And I'm not going to use actual lights. I'm just going to get you some brass rod here to make the buttons. I want this to have a little bit of a steampunk look, because I think steampunk is cool. I'm not going to use lights, but if you do use lights, that would be freaking awesome, and you should probably send me a picture of it because I would love to see it. Piece out and mark your bends in Sharpie marker where you want it to be, and right here for the part that's going to go under this piece, punch some holes and keep some rivets in it to make sure it's in place. Punch these holes for your buttons now while you're at it. I know I said I was not going to weld this, but while I was folding it over, it looked good. But there was a lot of space in between here, and I didn't just want to use glue to cover it up, so I just laid the material down there to make it look good. Now, what we're going to do now is that we're going to cut, well, I'm just going to use brass rod. You're going to, you know, pretty much just put it in the holes, pretty much just cut it to shape, and just glue it in there like that. And before you do any welding or soldering, you want to make sure that your metal is clean, because while I was doing that, it started to smell really bad because the oil and crap started to burn. So just sand off everything before you apply heat to it. Once you have your copper pieces cut out, or wooden pieces or whatever you're using, you have to glue them in with epoxy, and I'll show you how to do that now. How I glued these little dowel buttons here in is that I got some epoxy. I went kind of scraped. I'm going to do this the best I can with one hand. And just scrape some I was kind of working on this before I got the camera just so I can show an example. And just get some on your hand, go. You're sorry, on the nail that you're using. You don't want this stuff to touch your hand. Kind of like just plunge it in there and kind of scrape the size off it. No, it's going to come up, just keep going up and down. Kind of just. Okay. Now, don't be shy with how much you put in there. The stronger the connection, or sorry, the more that's in there, the stronger this base here would be. Then just get your rod and just simply push it down in there. Then just twist it and stuff to make sure that it sits flat before the epoxy sets, and you should be good. Done gluing in these 3 buttons here, you want to add your hinges. And you want to put them in these spots. Though, whenever you do this, put them in, use smaller hinges. Because, like, whenever I went to the hardware store, I picked up these. This would just have been way too massive. Like, so I used these smaller brass ones. So I think that worked out pretty well. And I was kind of being stupid. I kind of put the pop rivet in. You know, so it would go into the foam. But whenever you make your design, make sure you have some metal that you could fold up so you could add this hinge on. But I actually just got away with using some epoxy, and that worked for me. Oh yeah, and I glued some foam on the back side just for some support whenever I attached the PVC pipe onto it. So I recognized while I was building this, my phone case idea thing, where I would pretty much cut out a phone case. This would sit in here. The idea was that I could get any phone in here if I cut out the shape of the phone. Then I just put this case thing in here, and then pretty much just, well, I'm not actually thinking, it's just an example. Then I pretty much just slide that in there. Pretty much the idea that it would hold the phone or the iPod. But as I was going on, it turns out that the foam isn't really strong enough to hold it in here, and I can't cut. And I realized whenever I tried cutting it, I'm not exactly the sharpest cutter. So what I realized that I was going to have to do is instead of making this a multiverse thing, I noticed that if I wanted to make it for an iPod, I was going to have to get my piece here, attach the foam thing on the back. You can't really see it too well, but right, attach the foam thing on the back here. So, you know, but then, yeah, you probably can't see that at all. But pretty much push it in and glue it in, and then pretty much, then the iPod will be strong enough just to, like, it will be strong enough just for it to sit there and I could take it out. But I can't put another phone different than the iPod in. But if you want to make a bigger, make it for something bigger, like, I don't know, maybe a Samsung phone, you could go cut out another shape like this, but make sure the whole thing, like this, but without this big square, so it's just the platform, and then put it on. So then whenever you would do that, you would open it, and then you could just set, this is just a track phone, but you could pretty much just set it in there, close it, and then it'll be fine. And yeah, so I guess I'm just going to do the iPod thing because I'm making this for a friend and she owns an iPod, so that's just what I'm going to do. A reminder, I probably already mentioned this, but whenever you make your template, do not do what I did with that. Cut the bottom layer of the Pipboy. Make sure like that it's the exact size of the device that you want to put in. Just making little side pieces to fill up the side of the Pipboy. You mark everything and the dimensions and where everything is going to be. Cut the PVC pipe in half. Now if you have really small hands, you don't need to do this, but since I have freaking baseball mitt hands, I'm going to have to, I got the finger in the shot, I'm going to have to cut it in half. And then what you're going to want to do after that is just put a hinge here, but make sure the pin is removable. Now, I know I already said this, but you have to wear a mask or something while you do this, because you really do not want this PVC stuff in your lungs. Easier than I thought. Now do the other side. Super light touch-ups with the grinder, and use sandpaper to make it as smooth as possible. Remember, this is going around your arm, so you don't want it to scratch. I marked 1/4 of an inch on the end of these side pieces I made. Then I punched 3 holes across. The purpose of this is that whenever I put this on, the PVC pipe is going to go on in this circle here, and then I'm going to put another plate of steel on top and bend it over. And that's going to make the back portion of the Pipboy. Now what I did, I know I'm using way too much epoxy on this project. I would solder it all together, but there's just too much foam. What I did, I got a container, I balanced it up, then I just put epoxy on there. And it was actually sitting there for a while, so I'm going to try to... Okay, that works. Alright, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put epoxy on this side as well. Then I'm going to do the same exact thing on this side for the other piece. Here I added on hinges with some pop rivets and using my trusty rivet gun. Important, you probably can't see it, but I drilled a little hole right here about the size of my magnet. I'm going to glue my magnet in like that. Of course, like centered and all leveled. This serves as a purpose so this thing doesn't go flying everywhere and is a lot better than using a hinge at this state, because I don't know, a hinge would probably be more difficult to put on in this state that's in, but the magnet is just an easy fix. Give your PVC pipe a base coat of gray. And don't worry about covering up the rivets because you're going to sand that off later. Just paint them gray, but I recommend using more of a silvery color if you want. Very close to completion. What you have to do now is just line this up so that it's on, so that you see little material on each side. Just make it even. But if you kept your marks on, you should be fine, but it doesn't really matter at this point. And make sure it's all where you want it. Then use your epoxy to glue right here, obviously on the other side, and in this crease right here. It's probably most important that you get in this crease right here. So, and then after that, we're going to paint it. The knobs, if they're really weird colors like blue and white, just give them a quick base coat of gray. If you want the game look, paint the entire thing green, but don't worry, it does not have to be perfect. Actually, it would be better if it was not perfect, because we're just going to sand it off later, or most of it anyways, just to make it look like it's been through a lot. But if you just want to keep it raw metal how it was, just do that, and that would look cool too. Or, I don't know, it would be pretty sweet if you want to paint it gold or give it a mirror shine. All that would be freaking awesome, but this is what I'm doing. Here's most of the paint scratched off. Looks pretty good in my opinion. Now I'm going to paint it black, but then rub it right off just to age it. With the black acrylic paint rubbed on and rubbed off, I really like how it looks. It just looks so awesome in my opinion. Like, like, I don't know, like if something from the game fell out. But one thing I am going to do, I'm going to use a little sanding sponge and some sandpaper to sand it up just a little bit, just to bring out some of the highlights, just to make it look just a little bit better. This is so cool whenever it's all complete. So anyways, if you've watched the whole entire video and you're seeing this now, thanks so much for watching. I don't know, I'm gonna take a guess and say it's probably around an hour long. But like, it's just, I don't know, I mean, I've done metal work before, it's just that this is like my first futuristic video game build. So that's pretty awesome. And I know I delayed on the Jason mask tutorial. That'll be coming up soon. And also, for the few of you subscribers that actually asked me to keep making these videos, thank you so much, and you guys are freaking awesome. And I'll see you next time.